Did I say that right?
No.
Fetishizing
I'm not gonna try to say it at all. This
of black bodies. So how do you say it, Yuri?
Fetishizing.
Fetishizing of black bodies. I'm super excited about this episode because just where I come from, being black and being a black man who subscribes to the Christian faith, sexuality is not a topic that's necessarily discussed in the black household, and it's damn sure not discussed within the church in a way that normal people can receive. And so I've always had such a hard time expressing my sexuality and talking to black men about what that looks like in my life, right? And some of the experiences. And so that's particularly why I'm excited about this conversation, just because I get to share that opportunity, because we don't do that. And so I know for me growing up, sex wasn't a topic. You know, when the first thing, and I share this all the time. I shared this on the last podcast. The first thing that ever was said to me by my mom was, "I wouldn't love you if you turned out to be gay." And I'm like, bro, what? Like, what? We not gonna have no other.
How old were you again?
I had to be maybe like 11 or 12.
Mm.
And then I also remember being in middle school.
But did you even know what it meant to be gay at
Oh,
that
absolutely.
time?
Like,
Okay.
I'm a millennial kid. Like,
Right.
we know what gay is before we know what sex is, which is crazy.
Yeah. But everything was gay at that time. Like,
Everything was-
everything we didn't
That's
like.
true.
You
That's
know,
very
at that
true.
time. But yeah, continue on, man. You were saying that in middle school.
And so in middle school, I remember us pulling out of the driveway. I hope she doesn't listen. I hope a lot of people don't listen to this episode, but I don't give a shit. They were backing. We were backing out of the driveway, and she looked at me. She was like, "Your grandfather thinks you're gonna be gay." I'm like, "Why do people keep thinking this? I don't even know what I am." And I remember my heart dropping, right? And from that point, it kind of like shifted how I viewed myself, right? Because it didn't matter. And to me, it didn't, because I wasn't necessarily ready to attack the conversation about my sexuality. I'm in middle school, right? The type of kid that I was just trying to survive childhood. So that wasn't even a conversation that I was ready to tackle. I needed to just tackle me being a human and get
yourself,
right who I was as an individual, right? And so I remember those conversations being very pivotal to how I viewed myself, right? Not only when it came to my sexuality, but just really how it, when it came to my identity. And so I guess I want to ask you guys, what was the first conversation about sexuality and also just about sex, right? Like, I know sex is a large part of sexuality, but who was the first person to talk to you about something like that?
And for context, when you ask that, you're like just a peer, just anybody about that topic, or
who was the first person in your family, right? Because I think we are
Okay.
all because I think, this may be your experience. I guess before I go into that question, who was the first person to tell you about sex? Was it anybody in your family? Because it was not my parent.
Yeah, for me it was like in school. Like as a kid, I think I was exposed to it, and I kind of saw it on my own. Like I told y'all before, it
Yeah.
was just stumbling upon the channel as a youth, and getting that exposure there. But at that time, I really did not know what I was looking at. And then you start to put two and two together when other kids start talking about it, and you know what I'm saying. So I would say as early as like elementary school, those types of things started to come about where you get curious as to like what this is, because it feels like everybody was making a big deal about it, but nobody knew what they were talking about.
Right.
So that's more so the feeling that I remember getting around that time. It was just very, very early though, but like I said, it's just nobody really knew what the hell they were talking about. It's just little things that they might have been exposed to here and there.
Yeah.
So
If I'm not mistaken, I remember tell us that story again. Where did we re-record that podcast when you tell us about your father and your daddy asked you on on the ride to like a basketball game or something?
Oh, no. So I moved out of this was like the talk, quote
Right.
unquote,
How
right?
old were you when that happened?
Man, I had just turned 16.
Okay.
So I had just moved out of our house in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to school in Jersey because I wanted to play basketball there. Something happened where it was a very new school, so like the first 2 weeks new students weren't allowed. They had to like fix their systems or whatever. So I got picked up to go to Pennsylvania,
Mhm.
right? When I got picked up, this is when the talk happened because apparently they found a box and I had like condoms in there and things of that nature. So
Back home in your room.
back home in PA.
Oh,
that
they was
were
going through your
yeah,
no.
and they was cleaning that out. So Mom told Pops. Pops was like, I'm gonna talk to him, right? So we're sitting down and he's talking to me and he's like, so we found the box. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, the one in the closet. I'm like, oh, yeah. He's like, yeah, so you having sex? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, are you using a condom? And I'm like, yeah.
Pause. Question.
Go ahead.
Were there condoms in the box
Yeah,
already?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that was a question he already knew the answer to.
Oh, okay.
But he asked it anyway, and I was just like, yeah. And then, bro, I tell you, like, he was like, all right. And when I tell you, we literally rode in silence for like the next hour and 45 minutes to Pennsylvania. Like, it was awkward as shit. But yeah, that was the talk for me. Just, are you using condoms? I guess that was good enough at the time, but like, damn.
Before we slide to Mars really quickly, because I want to know your experience, Mars. I want you to answer both of these questions. But before we do that, who was the first person to even mention sex to you prior to that conversation?
I had an older cousin.
Okay.
So he was like 4 years older. So he was like experiencing stuff, and then like he'd be like the old wise one for me when I was like 8, 9 years old, because at that time he's 12, 13. So he's in all that, right? Like,
Yeah.
right. So basically him who was like first telling me about it and first like, but I would say like I have a very curious mind. So I think something about that early exposure, just stumbling upon that like 96, 98 channel when I was going through all them on the cable box. I'm probably dating myself, but I think something about that kept me curious to where I just kept like trying to find out what that was.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And I think I just like ended up like I would like surf that channel real quick when I was like, you know what I'm saying? So I think I just did a little bit more exploring on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And then like life, like it was like girls were always like showing their butts at a certain point. I don't know why. Like you told the story about that too, bro. Like it was like at a certain age, it just like flashed their butts. Like, and you're just mad. You don't even know what's going on, but like just little. It's just I can't even understand that now as like a parent. Like why like you know what I'm saying? But it's I don't know. It was just very early exposure that led to a lot of like curiosity.
Position to do this.
Yeah.
I guess for me, what I would say is I was taught a lot by like older women, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? Like a lot of older women got me to do what they wanted me to do.
Yeah.
I feel like I was overly sexualized at a younger age by however it went on. Like I remember I think I was in like second grade and like a fourth grader wanted to do stuff with me when I was younger. A lot of times I wasn't by myself, but I was in like the care of like daycare or school and all that.
Yeah.
Public care isn't always the best at keeping eyes on people, so I ended up doing stuff different ways. So I was an experimenter, I guess you should say. Like as a kid, I'm a young boy. You know, I feel like one thing you said earlier was that like I usually feel like even now that I was always horny, even like just curiously horny. You know what I mean? And so it wasn't that I was always trying to do stuff, because I think I lost my virginity at I think a fairly average age than other people that we've had this conversation with. but I was always doing little things with older women that exposed me to that kind of
Yeah,
Mhm.
thing.
same.
They taught me technically some stuff. When I actually got talked to about sex for the first time,
Mhm.
I had been I found something on the the rare computers we could have back in like early 2000s, right? And I saw the history and I found it that way. And then we had a storage unit in the back of the house, and I ended up finding a whole tote full of magazines. And so I had stolen one after looking through all of them, and kind of, and it's a lot. So I did some research and was playing around and just experimenting and trying to see what I had. So I put some in the bathroom closet, right? And so my stepdad cleans out the bathroom closet, and first of all, it's his magazine, it's his toast and everything, right? And so what he says is, and this is the first time somebody's talking to me about this, what I
Mhm.
mean,
Mhm.
and me being consuming this kind of content.
Right.
And he's like, "What is this?" And I'm like, looking at him like, "Yo, like
Like-
it's yours."
It's yours. You know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, "All right, well, you can't have this, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know." And I'm like upset, and I'm also like embarrassed, and I'm about to get in trouble too. But he was like, "If I find you with this again, I'm gonna tell your mom." And so I don't think he ever told my mom, because one thing
He
I didn't
wasn't
know
about to
is,
tell. That's self-incriminating.
yeah.
He
Well, one
was-
thing is I didn't know if they knew or not,
Mhm. Mhm.
that he had the tote or not. But I just didn't want to get in trouble too. I wasn't gonna tell anyways. But that was the first time I've gotten talked to it about just it in general
Yeah.
from an adult.
Mhm.
And it was the senses I got was that you're not supposed to have that.
Yeah.
Right. And so then, like, when I was 10, right before I moved to live with my dad, I think my mom was trying to, not necessarily beat my dad, but make sure she was doing what she was supposed to do to set me up
Okay, I remember you
to
saying
be
that. Yeah.
outside of her vision, shall I say, her grasp. And so she told us right before we moved with my dad at 10.
Yeah.
Me and my brother.
I
And
think.
so
Yeah.
we had that conversation. She talked about condoms
Mhm.
and all that. And then as soon as I actually left to go live with my dad, that next year in school they did sex ed,
Oh,
which was
okay.
very confusing still, because they tried to teach you
Very
the
much
body
so.
the
Yeah.
body parts, and then the teacher's not trying to be awkward because it's one of your
Mhm.
normal teachers. It's not just a teacher that comes in that you don't know.
Mhm.
It's just, yeah, it was kind of
It was weird.
super weird. And then you get taught through, I think I was taught a lot through or
Experience.
experimenting and
Mhm.
through my experience, but a lot by older women. And so one thing I did want to ask you guys while I was answering these questions was,
Mhm.
have you felt like you had ever been because a lot of people's stories, even if it's like traumatizing and or not, right? It's that somebody of older age kind of exposed them to this, and
Yeah.
physically and not. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
were you exposed to older, any genre of women, or any genre of gender, exposed to somebody over sexualizing you? Because that's basically what it is at that point when they're older than you. You know?
Yeah. We'd go to trips to like like my parents would send me to DR, Dominican Republic, and to spend some time out there in the summer, like when I would like on summer vacation and stuff. Um, and there it happened a number of times because the girls like in the neighborhood, like couple were my age, but there was a couple that were older. So in that instance, they were like I think like 3 and 4 years older than me, and one kind of like got on me in the way that I told y'all about my first experience, to where it was like I did not want you on me, and she weighed like more than me.
I
You
don't
feel me?
remember.
Like
I don't remember that.
I don't remember the
I
details.
didn't, I
but
didn't,
think
I didn't explain the details
Okay.
of this. So
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Okay,
so
okay.
like it was like kind of forceful.
you said you
and
didn't
like
want it.
at all. Like
How
I,
old were you?
and
How old were you again?
I was like 9.
Okay.
You feel me? She was probably like 13, 14. Kissed me, right? Did not want that, right? Got up, everybody like it's treated like a joke or whatever. So I don't really know how to feel, but whatever. I just kind of brushed past it, and there was a girl that I did like at the time, and she was like around 13, and I was 9, and then she had kissed me, and that was like my first ever like tongue kiss, and I was like mind blown. I was like, man, I'm a man now,
Yeah.
or whatever. But you know, even in that case, it's like two different scenarios,
Mhm.
two different. In one case, I actually was a participant. The other one, I was kind of just like, why the hell am I even in this situation?
Right. Right. Right.
But both older women too. So
Mhm. Yeah.
Even I mean, not to but to finish that statement on like how I feel like I've always been overly sexualized by older,
Hmm.
um, women. Even like when I'm a grown man now, like to sort of think,
Hmm.
almost 30 now. But women that watched me grow up would, you see that they have interest in you and by
Hmm.
different ways and stuff, which was really weird in my 20s
Hmm.
noticing that. I was like,
Hmm.
wait, we used to call you auntie so and so,
Hmm.
and that kind of like was confusing as a young man kind of growing up.
Hmm.
So
So, did I have moments where, um, or interactions where, like, I was with an older cousin, right? Where there was a sexual interaction? Absolutely, right? I feel like in Black culture, your your cousins, like, are generally like yo. I hate to say it out
especially
loud,
with
but
that
like it is what it is.
the
It is
boredom we were talking
it
about.
is what it is. Like your cousins, and they generally or the friends of or kids of your parents' friends. They're generally your like first interaction. So like, have there been those moments? Absolutely. But do I feel like Black culture does a terrible job of over sexualizing Black men and Black children in general? Absolutely. Because before you're talking to me about my body and like what it looks like to honor my temple and what it looks like before I even begin to explore who I like, right? You're talking to me about like, you got uncles like being like asking me if I got a girlfriend. And it's like I don't even really I'm trying to
Bro, I'm
figure
trying to play
I'm
basketball.
trying to I was playing
Yeah.
soccer. You get what I'm saying?
Nah,
I'm
yeah,
I, I'm
yeah,
just
yeah.
trying to play Yu-Gi-Oh. You trying to you
Yeah.
trying to and so I think they you said he said Tremaine said no Yu-Gi-Oh. Pokemon, like all of that. I'm trying to be a kid,
Right.
or it's like or they're forcing you to go chase some tail,
Yeah.
or um or even when you look at I've heard stories of women being like I would get a spanking for doing a cartwheel because I had on a skirt as a kid, right? And
They get the total opposite kind
exactly
of
like they exactly. And so
obligations
that
from society, I guess.
exactly so that makes us that over sexualizes us in general,
Yeah.
right? Whereas where we begin to kind of like lose respect for who we are and gain respect for like what we suppose how we're supposed to like govern ourselves, right? Which I think one needs to be taught before it's the other is taught.
Hmm.
You need to be taught when it comes like to sexuality is the expression of like your attractions, right? And sexuality is the expression of your attraction to other people, like what it looks like for you during sex.
Mm.
Um, you know, and so I think when we're having a conversation about sexuality, like we need to first have the conversation about what it looks like to honor the temple,
Yeah.
and then right after we talk about honoring the temple, and like before we talk about what you're gonna chase and who you're gonna be with or what your future is supposed to look like with said partner,
Hmm.
why aren't we teaching our young people, how to love themselves fully when it comes to like sharing yourself? And so I guess I want to ask you guys, being dads, being fathers, and now looking back at yourself as, what would you have what do you feel like you should have told somebody should have told that young man? Like when it came to sex. Like if you could rewrite that story when it came to that part of the story.
Yeah, so I could go back to the story with my dad. Like we had a whole hour and a half where we could have talked about stuff,
Right.
right? And I feel like that hour and a half in silence, it's so confusing and crazy to me because it's like, that's it. You feel me? Like nothing else. Like I guess I gotta just figure this out on
This is how
like
humans come in the
right.
world.
Like this, I just gotta figure this shit out. All right, cool. But like in that talk, I just experience like you don't have to go into detail, but like yo, tell me where you messed up at. Tell me what lessons you've learned. Tell me how I don't like things that I can use to navigate. Give
Mhm.
me a little bit of wisdom here so that I can step into this. You know what I'm saying? Because I can step into this knowing more, right? And I'm not falling into any traps. I'm not unaware, right?
Mhm.
And then you just go about it. I think the reason why we're not honoring or we as a culture don't honor our temple is lack of information.
Yeah.
We're not taught or basically anything,
Right.
right? So when it comes to that, it comes from us just finding out, experimenting, experiencing, and just living
Mm-hmm.
life in that sense. And I feel like it should not be such a taboo topic.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we could have talked about so much more. Just giving game on like, yo, watch out for these. You know what I'm saying? Watch out for this. This is,
Right.
qualities of a woman that that you might want to look out for and be
Right.
with. These are what you want to look out for, and then not, the road you might not want to take. Right. So just a lot of different things. But to your question again, it's I've taken that, and with my son, it'll just be first is just educating him on his body,
Yeah.
right? Then instilling confidence
Yeah.
in himself. As he continues to get older, like the main thing is to continue to educate at his pace, because we can't sit here and be like at 7, at 9, at 12 we're gonna no, like it's like as once he steps out of the house and he's like in school and things of that nature, he's out of our environment.
Hmm.
Now he's exposed to whatever these other kids are exposed to, or whatever he sees or experiences outside in this outside world.
Mm-hmm.
So now we don't know exactly all the information that like gathering throughout the day. So it's on us to meet him where he's at
Mm-hmm.
and educate him immediately on things like when it comes to sex, on what it is that he's experiencing, answer any questions that he has as honest as we can,
Mm-hmm.
and
Bingo.
build that trust
Yeah.
within one another, so that he doesn't feel like he has to figure it out on his own, right? He
Yeah.
has a safe space to come to and be like, hey mom, hey dad, I have this going on, or I really like this girl, I'm confused on how to go about it. Like, just to build the trust to talk about it, because I feel like another thing is we're not taught like intimacy and love past sex,
Yeah,
Mhm.
I was
in
about
a
to
lot
say
of
that.
cases too. So
Yeah.
just kind of getting into that and teaching like, hey, love has more value than sex, and we have more value to sex than our physicality and our genitalia. Like it's more to it than what we've been given,
Hmm.
Right.
in terms of information. So just being very open, meeting him where he's at, and just really building that trust so that he can continue to not only have a safety net when it comes to that, and so that he doesn't feel alone, but
Yeah.
also so that he's not only respecting himself, but whoever he's laying with too. So
Mhm. That's dope. Just from the aspect, because I know that like a lack of relationship with parent can strongly impact your sexuality based off of like what you have impressing you. And so that relationship, with young people in general and being honest, I think you said that being honest is the biggest thing. I think for me, that's what I just would have really, really respected more, is honesty. And we talked
yeah,
about that on the last podcast, where especially with our mothers, where it's like we know that they were trying to protect us, but actually the effect of the protection had like a larger
a longer lasting
a
like
lo-
effect,
like
right? Yeah.
exactly. And so Mars, I I just guess want to ask you that same exact question.
Um, I don't know if being specifically a parent, has anything to do with talking about it, because we just need the right person most of the time.
Hmm.
But parents have the distinct task of supposedly doing it as
Hmm.
as their kid grows up, right? But the parents, like, even when you're a single parent, you can get the right people in the space, like mentors and different things like that. It's just up to you to get them that information. It doesn't have to come from
Hmm.
you. So, but for me, I would say that in itself is knowing that when you're trying to teach. But like Yuri kind of hit the nail on the head when he was talking about what you mentioned was what it looks like during sex. Technically,
Hmm.
right? You're not telling them or showing them porn or anything like that, but you want to beyond the sex, the physical. Sex is way more
Mm-hmm.
than physical. It's a mental thing. And then once we start teaching them mindset
Mm-hmm.
of sex, I think they will start understanding a little bit more.
And are you saying this is what you wish you would have received as
Oh yeah,
well?
easily.
Oh, absolutely.
Easily. This
Mm-hmm.
is one of the things that if I want to teach it this way, because it's such a taboo topic, like you mentioned earlier, not don't make it a taboo topic. Make it a
Right.
topic of growth, right? Like
Right.
when like the things like you're supposed to be technically teaching when you're
Mm-hmm.
growing up. Hygiene, right? Take a shower, brush your teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, make sure that you're taking care of your body. Make sure you love your body. You understand? What are you looking at when you look in the mirror? Different things like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at your body to notice when things are different, right? In different cultures, like ancient, like Chinese cultures, not even just ancient, but in different religions, and as they're doing their growth, like when they hit certain milestones, they have ancient scrolls and stuff where they'll teach them sex positions and different things like that. And this is not necessarily coming from the mother; it's coming from the whatever the school or whatever where the women are at that age group. You see what I'm saying? And so,
Right.
which is it's just shows how weird our Western hemisphere is, where we're just allowing parents uneducated to just go do random things, and then we don't think that it's going to affect our kids third hand or second hand. You know what I mean? And so that's what I think that we end up in a lot, and that we got in our generation, of course, when our parents are figuring out how to live, finally getting certain civil rights. You know what I mean? And then kind of trying to be free and be parents as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I really do wish I was taught that it's more of a mental thing than a physical thing.
Mm-hmm.
STDs more of a mental thing, you know,
Mhm.
not just physical, and babies, because I feel like this, and I think Yuri can only really understand, but I think you were one of those people that could understand without having the physical thing happen to you. But sometimes you need the physical thing to happen to you.
Mhm.
And so when I got and I like being upfront about, I've had an STD before. It was a curable one, but you know, just having STDs and talking about them is the reason it spreads so much, because we don't talk about them
So
and we don't tell people, you know, like we should, right? Things like that is why things spread and go downhill quickly.
thank you for sharing that. One of the things that I wanted to ask you guys when it came to this topic in regards to sexuality, you mentioned, Mars, like how sex is such a taboo topic
Yeah,
when it comes to Black culture.
all of it.
All of it, right? And so it's been hard for me to discuss my sexuality, not even in the sense of who I'm attracted to, right? And me expressing the fact that I don't necessarily want to be labeled, because I'm on this journey to actually like figuring out who God wants me to be with, right? And like knowing that God has a specific partner for me. But why do you think it's so hard for Black culture, and especially Black men, to talk about sexuality in spaces like this? Because I even find myself being a little timid to talk to you guys about what that part of my life looks like. Like, why do you think that it's hard for this space?
That's easy. Fear of judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Society's through society's
Social
norms,
conditioning.
you know, and not having the actual space. This is a rare space. We keep saying, "I see you, bro." It's different. It just is. There's nothing like this really anywhere. So just not even having the space to feel comfortable to be like, "Hey, man, I want to try this. What
Right.
do y'all think about this?" You know what I mean? Like
Right.
just
right.
with friends, right? Like how should I go and try that? Like
We've
you
had
know what I mean?
mad conversations. Like,
And it's kind of
yeah.
hard to even have that in your everyday guys circles, talking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
football or you know what I mean, oh man, just go get some money or go get some chicks, you know what I mean? It's like, and that's how I feel like I've always had conversations and about, and then when I try to step out of the norm into taboo topics, I'm not comfortable, right? And so like I think that's really the biggest thing is fear of judgment, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
What about what you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to do with social conditioning too a bit. Just what's deemed normal and what's deemed not, and then you kind of feel like an outsider if you like anything that's outside of what's deemed normal,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think, fear of judgment from others. You don't know how you'll be received or perceived by those that you tell things about you. So you kind of just don't talk
Unfortunately,
about.
it's making those things normal,
But not in the
in the
right
right way.
way.
Yeah,
Not
we
in the
want to
right
make it
way.
in the right way, where we're talking about these things
Because
in the
in a
right
candid
spaces,
way,
right?
right?
In
Like,
the right spaces,
and
like
in an informational way that
Yeah.
you can leave with, and that's what we speak about. It's like if you're a creator out there, if you're producing something for the world, Have people leave with something, because they're not leaving with something that they can genuinely use for their betterment.
Yeah.
It's-
That's kinda
They
what we're
might
looking
they
for.
might be able to identify certain body parts a little bit more loudly.
Exactly.
Yeah, because sharing your body is
Like-
not a joke.
No,
Like,
and that's the mindset part
it's
of it.
not a joke whatsoever when it comes to your sexuality. And before we hop into the conversation of fetishizing black
Hey.
exactly. Before we hop into the topic of fetishizing black bodies, when it comes to black men and us expressing ourselves in a healthy way, what I guess what I'm asking is, what advice would you give to the man that's on his journey? Like he's established, and it doesn't. We're not talking to any particular type of man, right? Like, because we obviously know my story, right? Where it's like I'm not necessarily particularly comfortable, right, with expressing every part of my journey. I talk to you guys about it, but I know that there's a lot of black men out there that don't necessarily want to label themselves, because I know when we talk about sexuality, especially out in the world and out in the public, you're automatically labeled like gay or this, and if you are a heterosexual male, you need to act like this in order to like stay within this lane. Like, what is the most honest advice that you could give to a black man that is coming out of this world where he's been told that a black man should be everything like this in the confines of sex?
Be yourself first. Like, find out who you are. Like, find out who you are first, and then love on that person. Give yourself all the love that you need, right?
Yeah.
Operate from that space, because you will only attract things that align with you. You will have so much better discernment for what doesn't align for you, people, places, things, opportunities. But find yourself, love yourself. On that journey, I think you just start with those things.
Yeah.
After that, the road gets a lot clearer in terms of what you like, who you like, what you want your future to look like, who that's with, right? And you just paint such a clear picture once you understand like who it is that you are. But you can't, you have to just say fuck everything that society is saying, all these labels, all these things that they try to put on people. Like, say fuck all of that. Like, if there's one thing that anybody should take away from listening to these episodes, is that we are more than just one label, one thing.
Right.
We are dynamic in all aspects. So you should carry it that way too, is just really candidly sit with yourself and find who you are, and just give yourself the love that you need. I promise you, you do those two things. I'm not saying everything will be perfect.
Yeah.
Everything will come to you with ease, but that road will get a lot clearer in terms of what it is that you want and do not want, what you accept, do not accept, and just what you want that to look like for you in terms of love and sex and all those things. So that's the advice I would give. Little 2-step process, a lot easier said than done, I promise you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd say that it's tough to really give advice in that. You said the best that you can do is be yourself.
I'm only
you know?
for context, I'm only saying it from my experience alone. So
yeah.
But I learned through trying things as well. So that's why I
Yeah.
wanted to put it out there,
Yeah,
because
and
I
that's
had
the
to go
best
through
thing.
different
People have
things.
to try things.
Yeah.
That's the part of the journey, right? If you feel a need to try pizza with pepperoni on it, man, go ahead and try the pepperoni. You know what I mean? Like, it's just that simple, right? And if you feel like, and society shouldn't tell you that, oh, pizza's out. Like, you shouldn't like pizza, right? So it's hard because, check this. I'm a 90s kid. So we came from the era of, if you do anything slightly off, guess what? That's gay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, literally that was the era, And then first of all, right before our era, gay went from just the definition being just happy, right? And merry, right? It's in some of the old songs, right? To meaning that you like the same sex, right? And so it's really weird how we define it, but I would say the same thing as be yourself. But not only that, when you're you could find your niche, right? Find your group. That's the
Mhm.
biggest part.
Mhm.
That you don't have to have labels, right? And that's what makes support groups or
Mhm.
groups in
Mhm.
general doing like
Mhm.
with like-minded people so strong, right?
That's good. I'm glad you mentioned that because I want to. Before we move on, I want to answer that because there are so many. I think black people, and you know me, I'm a lot about my faith, right? The fact that I love Jesus Christ, like that doesn't exempt me from a lot of stuff. I'm still very, very much human. That's just
Mhm.
what I subscribe to, right? But I feel like for a lot of people, when it comes to religion, we mentioned it at the beginning of the conversation. Like a lot of people that subscribe to any religion, like when it comes to the confines of like sexuality, it's not discussed at all, right? And so, what I would say for people that are subscribing to any religion, right? Like, shift out of religion, shift into relationship with like, who the creator is, right? Shift into that relationship and really find out, like, what it looks like to be authentic in your own regard. You know, what it looks like to shed false narratives about who you are when it comes to this space in your life. The other thing that you guys mentioned is community,
Mhm.
right? Like get a therapist, bro.
Nah, I wouldn't even say that. Just
No, when it comes to sexuality is a part of your identity.
I'd say
yeah,
you
but you don't
definitely
need a therapist
Okay,
to figure
having a
that out, you know?
mediator,
I
which
feel
could
like
technically be your group.
Yeah, because like
You
he said,
know,
like
so
community.
some kind of
so
mediator.
a community, right? But also when you're looking at people that look, when your community is people that look
You can be
just
blind.
like you,
You can be
that
blinded. I
there are a
got you.
lot of like false experiences, right?
Co-signing.
And so I knew for me, like I had to kind of come outside of my community to begin to get a lot of the advice that I got.
True.
You know what I mean? And a lot of that came from like a mental health professional and being like, hey, like, what if like this thing doesn't say that you're this? Like, what if you're just on this journey, on this process? What
So more so somebody to like listen to you
yeah,
on that journey.
listen, and that's not that.
Without biased opinion.
Yeah, like that doesn't sit in the same
I
space
get
as you.
that.
And I know that's also hard for people that do subscribe to any
Yeah.
religion, right? Especially the Christian faith. It's just like don't go see like if you get a counselor, like you are exiled,
If it's
or
not the pastor.
if it's not the pastor, right? But oftentimes the pastor going to rebuke you. You get
Yeah,
what I'm
they say
saying?
I'm not with any of that stuff.
So I would say like get
Damn.
community. Yeah.
I ain't know
Yeah,
all that.
it's like some pastors won't deal with that topic.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind
I've
of how
had
it
I've
is.
had that, and actually I left. I had an experience like that in college where the pastor was talking about that specifically. He's like, I ain't never dealt with that, so he like glitched and moved on to the next topic, and I left that situation feeling like I could never be loved because I had this part of my life that wasn't like blatant or like labeled or like cut and dry. And I feel like it's so many black men, especially, and I know that because we're taught to suppress that side of ourselves, and not even if you are, you know, fluid in that regard, right? Like, but in any regard, like you're kind of taught if you're not gonna be like toxic masculine, like don't say like suppress it all, right?
Yeah, let me ask you guys this because I think it kind of goes along with this, and I was kind of thinking about this on some kind of levels, right? As
Mm-hmm.
in the black community, what are some kind of myths? Because I think that kind of goes hand to hand with what you're saying. There's a lot of things that people were taught or think and have ideals about sex in our communities,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what's some myths about the black community? I know one that I know is that I kind of mentioned it is that one second, I'm sorry, I had it right here. Um but if you do certain things that you're gay, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're considered um not heterosexual anymore, you're homosexual. So it doesn't even matter what it is, right? If you step outside
Just
the
in general,
realms
like
of, yeah, even sexually, like I think, like sometimes, like when I would go to talk to friends about, like I said earlier, like should I try this, or like, hey, or is it something that you've
mm-hmm.
thought about? You know, like
Mm-hmm.
even with going down on
Mm-hmm.
women, it was for a while it was a very hard topic to talk about within friend groups because none of them was like, hell no, I'm never going to do that, right? And obviously, you know, it's 2024 and things have changed a little bit about certain topics like that. But even things like that, they'd be like, "Nah, bro, you doing too much," you know, and then it would quickly shift to being, either gay or just not. You're just weird, right?
Mhm.
So things like in myths about the black community and just the sexual natures. Like, do you guys have any of those?
Yeah, because I have that was a struggle, right? What I felt about my body or like just how I viewed my sexuality. I of course had experiences, right? And in the world, a lot of those experiences were with people who felt like my body should look a certain type of way, right? Like, and so I'm automatically approached by like women and men asking me like what my penis size is, right? Like what why are you asking? And so like there's this myth that like black men, we talked about it and it's a joke, but it also like it does something to you because you don't know what you ain't looking at nobody else's dick.
What's
Like
the average size? And now you,
yeah,
now, now you like, am
exactly.
I up to par?
Exactly. So there's this myth that our bodies should be like we should be goddesses, and I think that I've even struggled with that because being on like this the thicker side of guy, right? It's kind of like
Tough guy.
of man. I feel like
That
what
was
I'm
funny.
supposed to say. I want to
No,
say.
no, that was fine.
Nah,
of
it
guy-
You
just,
just called me. It was beautifully said.
Thank you. I'm working on being honest and
I-
politically correct.
I just looked at everybody and saw the reaction, and
What
I
was
can't,
what were
like,
they reaction like? Okay.
Yeah, it was like, okay, I like that.
On the thing. Like, all right, I see what he's saying. Because my body didn't look like, okay, here's a better way to say it. Because my body didn't look like the athletes or the black men that I saw on TV. There was only one black type of body on TV.
Mm-hmm.
And because I didn't look like that, it made me feel like I was less valuable.
Yeah.
And so I then became like when people would talk about my body in a certain type of way or put me in this category, I would go with it in order to make me feel valuable, right? And so like that was I feel like that's a myth that
Yeah.
like black bodies look a certain particular way.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
even really cast certain types of body types and certain types of people for shows because they don't want to show that type of body.
Yeah.
They want to fetishize.
Mm-hmm.
I still feel like that's wrong, but we gonna go with it. Uh, they fetishize a certain type of body,
Mm-hmm.
and I know culture has come a long type of way, but like to me, that's kind of one of the things that stick out when it comes to myths.
Yeah, it was that. You
Mhm.
seen it in like movies. You see it like all around, like the jokes that are being made.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a similar ish experience as well being Dominican. It's like like I was saying before we started recording, they viewed us the same way. It's like we were expected because we
Mhm.
were Dominican, and most of us were of a darker complexion to have a similar build as to what they're being told about. You know what I'm saying? So like they're expecting like your penis to be a certain size,
Yeah.
or you're like, you know what I'm saying? So like growing up, and this was like early, so like growing up you're already like, okay, I gotta be here, like I gotta work out, I gotta be strong, and like you're doing it for this expectation rather than like yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
that myth I think plays a role early on, just because it was just weird, like
Mhm.
just all those like it's very weird, like especially as you get older and you see all the subtle ways that they put that into different like pieces of content that we consumed growing up.
Yeah.
It's very, very strange,
Mhm.
to say the least. Another myth is like you're not a man. It was I wouldn't even say like you're not a man, but it was always this expectation
Mhm.
that you had to, like, it was like a conquering, like you had to
Yeah.
have multiple women, you
Yeah.
had to
To be
to sleep
participating.
with as many women
Yeah.
as you possibly could ever in life. Like it was just
That
this
hits
like
hard during like middle school and high school.
yeah, and it's just
Mhm.
like this ego
Mhm.
type thing where it's not even a myth, it's just like almost like bragging rights that
Mhm.
you're doing it for. And it's like not like I wouldn't even say that. It's like you just want to feel like the man, and everybody will crown you the man if they know you out here just killing shit left and right, right? So it's just like I would say that not necessarily a myth, but like a pressure, a real pressure that's put on boys growing into men at that time where one, we weren't taught properly about sex, like in most cases, right? Two, we're not taught to one, honor our body, nor honor the person we're laying with's body. And then three, we don't even have the proper information regarding proper protection, infections, pregnancies, this, that. And you topple all that misinformation and feed it all the other bullshit that we've been getting in terms of you have to slay this, you got to go after this type of woman with this type of body, and like all that type of shit. Like it's such a warped concept, and me saying it that way kind of, we shouldn't be surprised that we're here today, but I'm glad that we have spaces like this to kind of have these conversations, because it's gotten to a point where, like you said, it's in the music now affecting kids. Well, it's been in the music affecting kids, but it's like, now it's like, it's not even like, you have songs like I just learned like a week ago that Water song by Tyler, Tyler is about squirting. I ain't know that shit, but I I bought it up, and Leah was like, I was like, but there's stuff like that, and then there's stuff like Sexy Red, but Sexy Red is getting played everywhere. That's just getting played radio, club, everywhere. So
I immediately start playing the lyrics in my head.
See, in his head too. So, but nah, it's just it's I'd like to segue into like the media influence around this, because it's prominent. It's been there for a long time before any of us were really born or here. And it's looking like it's here to stay, right? And the best thing that we can do is educate, kind of mitigate these situations, especially for folks with kids as well. But the media influence has, I think, impacts that we're not aware of just yet. There will be studies years to come on the media influence, like the consumption of porn and the real effects that it's had on humans, right? Our social media and the effects that it's had on humans and relationships, and how people view just sex themselves, a lot of things, right? So I wanted to ask y'all, like, what influence do you feel media has had on Black men? And has it been, I know the answer to this, but I just want to get y'all opinion. What has been positive? Matter of fact, I'll ask it this way. What has been positive and what has been negative about media's influence on Black men and sex and sexuality and love and things of that nature, and intimacy?
You want to hit this one?
Y'all both smack y'all lips, so I know y'all finna say some shit.
This one is...
Because you asked, like, okay, what's the positive and the negative effects? All right, so I'm going to go with the positive thing first. The positive thing is that there are more stories being told.
Cool.
You can turn on the TV and see anything. You can turn on the radio and hear anything. They are doing a good job, even Disney, right? Like, they're showing different, and they're typecasting different. Are they doing a good job of providing context behind these stories? No. Because while they are sharing these stories, they are not showing the realities behind these stories and what's happening with these people. And so what's happening is you see this story, right? You finally see yourself on TV, and I see this guy who looks like me, and he doesn't have it all figured out, and he's on this journey, right? And he looks happy, and we know that at the end of it is like happy. But they don't never really show me that the process there is hard as hell. And so I'm stuck in the middle of my journey trying to figure out how to become this thing. Or this in alignment with what I think this is. And so where I think the negative thing is they don't do a good job of actually providing context surrounding these stories and what in the journey to become your best self, right? So they show every different type of black man, but they don't do our stories justice in the process. They automatically show us as the product. And they don't give us space to be human. I've never seen a story where a black man got to be human. There was always this expectation on him to be something else. There probably is a movie or something like that, but I haven't seen it. You know what I mean? But even in just like general conversation, when I'm even talking to my friends, they're like, he's a man, he should do this. I'm like, you are a 32-year-old white woman. How do you know what a man should be doing? You know, and so I think that a lot of people that are writing these that's writing these skits and that are getting these roles, they not doing a good job of providing the process and glorifying the process, right? Because where I am right now, I don't need the product. I need the process. I need somebody to tell me, hey, yo, bro, as a black man, like, and as a black man who is gonna be great, that's just in you, that's just in your DNA. Like, begin to honor the fact that you like even made it this far, and that your life don't gotta look a certain type of way. But I wish the media encouraged me how to love like my temple and my body, and how to seek peace within my inner self prior to them putting this thing on me. But that's just me. I have a love-hate relationship with media.
Yeah, same. Especially being a content creator, I think it happens all the time.
Yeah.
I'll say this. One thing you did say was that the positive side is that there's a lot more. We could see.
Yeah, more access and information.
Yeah.
Good and bad.
Well, yeah, but there's a lot. There's not one genre of black men that they're showing.
Right.
There's a vast majority that they keep showing, though, which leads me to my negative that I believe. I'm not going to say it's negative, but it's just unhealthy sometimes for the culture and mindset, right? Or for people's journeys, shall I say. And so I feel like there's a huge attack on the masculinity of black men, right? And so without getting super deep, I just really believe that they're showing a lot of depictions of the feminine black men, right? And or going towards the homosexual realm of those kind of leads more.
The lines are being blurred.
Exactly, and or not blurred, they're being written, shall I say. And so when we're attacking something, we have a certain goal in mind. And so that's kind of where I think that's heading as far as entertainment and media for what they're showing.
Like the influence?
Exactly, right.
To that point, that Cat Williams interview,
yes,
was
I did want to mention that too,
immaculate.
because you got to understand he mentioned a lot of stuff that if you already know who you are, that stuff's not gonna affect you.
Right.
And so he said, I know I don't want this.
Right.
So I'm not going to allow this. But if some people are going through a journey, and it's more now you're influencing one side now. Do you understand what I'm saying? So now your journey's being written instead of you going through it experimentally. You know,
because not everybody knows themselves, man.
Yeah, and then that money looks easier now. It don't matter my journey because I'm already indifferent about what I want to do. Anyways,
exactly.
Right? And some people just love money. But yes, to your point, I don't know if you wanted to make more about that.
No, I was just gonna say I love the interview because y'all know where I sit in regards to like my journey of sexuality and what that looks like with my faith. And to be honest with you, nothing in that interview offended me.
And he talked a lot.
And I was be like, he's actually telling the truth.
He was talking a lot about the fetishizing of black men.
Exactly.
And that's what he said kept happening.
And them even just like making us, like you said, seem this certain type of way. I know I'm trying to be politically correct again.
Fuck that.
Right. I was about to be like, I actually know niggas that like niggas that would never put on a dress.
Yeah.
And it's never
that
sweet.
Specifically.
No, yeah, it's not that specific, or like it's not that specific at all. But like, it's never like, I don't care what kind of black man you are, it's never that sweet.
Yeah.
And so I don't really know what media has been trying to tell, and I don't really know what other podcasts I've been trying to tell. But just know when it comes to the black man in this space, in any of the spaces that we in, it's never that. It's never sweet. Okay? And so I don't really, and we know on our journey that like it's just never gonna be that on this side of the water. So I really appreciate it.
There's all different genres of people. That's the case, right?
Exactly. So I really appreciate it. And so let me ask you guys this. As like we wrap up the conversation, I want to like dive into your experiences, right? And I want you to give me a summary of what it looked like for you on the journey of like finally becoming one with your body, right? When you finally had that first encounter, when you find like what that experience was like kind of up through now. And I want you to say a few lines of what you would tell yourself at the beginning of that journey.
So it started off against my will. I felt like those early years, those elementary, those middle school years was just kind of figuring out what this was, right? It's not, and I'm saying that not to say like this is all we thought about, but it's just like in the sexual journey, it's like figuring out what sex is really, right? Because it still felt like for all these years, like so many jokes were made, but people really didn't know what the fuck they were talking about. I mean, we were kids, right? And then you start to get into like high school, and now it's like, oh, it's game time. Like coach about to put you in the game at any moment. Like you don't ever know when it's when it's about to be your time, right?
Right.
And so you have your first experiences, and at first I was I would say I was a little bit shy, but it was like, cause I was just like, oh, this is not a fire drill, this the real thing, and you're just there. And you just kind of go through it. I was asked, like everybody sucks at first. I'm assuming, but I was,
yourself,
yeah, all right, but
yourself,
but nah, I was just like,
did my research.
I didn't know what I was doing, bro. But you go through that, and as a young kid, man, as an adolescent, as a young man, like from my perspective, I one of my first introductions to sex was porn. The information I was given, and credit to my parents, so they would like throughout the years, I didn't mention this, but throughout the years they would like ask little questions just to see where I'm at with it. I just don't think that they expected me to be all the way there with it by the time I had left, right? So I feel like now that I talked about that story again, he might have not known what the hell to say to me, because he's like, oh shit, well he already doing it, you know what I'm saying? Like, he already doing it, you know? But yeah, it was just through that journey, those teenage years, really just, I was trying to knock everything down, bro. I was like 14, 15, 16. I was going crazy. And then, like, I go to college, and I got kicked out because I was just having way too much fun, partying, drinking, like, and all those things. I say all that to say, like, I was just lost in that time frame, just finding myself, finding who it is that I like, just even... like sex wasn't even a connection type of thing at that. It was just more like an experience. I'm learning. I'm experiencing different people. I'm learning like who I am a little bit more throughout this process. Like, because you start to, with some you build a relationship, you know, but for the majority of the time, like when I was young, I didn't really care for it. Now I'm not just allowing anyone in my space. I'm being very, very picky about who I'm with. I'm no longer just trying to conquer the village. I'm trying to go find my queen, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so that started that journey. And of course, you have some moments where you're just like fucking off because you're still like early 20s. You drinking, you living, like you traveling, or like I was at that time. And it's just like that. Those things happen, but my intent at a certain point was like, I want a family, dog. Like, I don't know when it's gonna happen, but I want a family.
At some point it changed, though.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, so it went from like, but a lot of, I will say this, a lot of what I've dealt with up until like recently, a couple years ago, was like, not even probably more than a couple years ago, I would say, I was unaware that it stemmed from what happened when I was 4.
Yeah.
I was aware, And it's crazy because somebody on deployment, they probably won't even remember this. On deployment, they asked me like, "Yo, why?" They're like, "Why are you such a savage with women?" And I was like, "Y'all really want me to be honest?" It's like I was like sexually abused when I was 4, and I told them this, and they like, and at that time they were like, "Yeah, but that doesn't mean that like," and I just stopped talking because in my mind, I was just like, "What the fuck do you mean?" That doesn't what the fuck like who are you to tell me how I'm supposed to feel about this thing that I haven't even processed? Like, I so it really like but it made me look inward again, and that's what really made me start to attempt to heal from that thing. And I was about 23.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm saying? So these are different little chapters, I guess, in that evolution, but
That makes sense, yeah. Because you had something.
Yeah, I want to share these statistics, and then Mars, I want you to share what your experience has been like, because we know that it's been crazy for you as well, and so I'm excited for you to tell this part of your story. And we've actually heard a lot of stories about sexual abuse within the childhood of men of color, right? I don't think that there are a lot of. I know that there are not a lot of statistics because we're not telling our stories. We've been afraid to tell our stories, and so I just want to use this as a moment before I step into these statistics to like encourage Black men to tell their stories, because there are sons and cousins and brothers out there that need to hear these stories, so that way they know how to handle their process and handle their journey, right?
There's a lot of Black men in our support groups. The 3 that we had, and even the open discussion where people spoke about stuff that they never talked to anybody else.
Exactly. So share your story. So there's an author and journalist, Robin D. Stone. She has a resource guide. It's called No Secrets, No Lies: How Black Families Can Heal from Sexual Abuse. She shares 10 facts about sexual abuse in African American communities. I'll just read a few of them before I let you go, Mars. It says, it's more common than you think. In surveys of adults, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men report that they were sexually abused as a child. Every 1 in 6 men as children are sexually abused. So it's 6 men in this room, at least one, right? That's crazy to me. Many African Americans think that child sexual abuse is more typical among white people. Statistics show that blacks were sexually victimized in childhood about the same rates as whites. So, and you know that Black culture is really good for being like, nah, white people do that. No. It's just that white people are actually telling their stories.
And we just make a joke out of it.
And we make a joke out of it. It's not a joke. 2/3 of all victims of sexual assault reported to the police were under 18. In nearly 95% of those cases, the offender was a family member or acquaintance. Another crazy statistics is that not only are these pieces of our stories, but it's actually happening to us by people that we love and that we know and that we care about. And so it's something to be said, about this isn't just on us. It's about the people that you let into our lives, and it's about how we're being protected as young people.
That's why I'm very careful about who's around Tino.
You hear me, bro?
Yeah.
Like you have to, like it's, and so it's 95% of those cases. I think that's wild. Poverty, which contributes to violence in many communities, is not seen as a risk factor for child abuse. Abuse is more likely to be reported among low-income families, but is virtually undetected in families whose money or status shields them from the authority. So you think it's just in low-income families and poverty? No, it's happening everywhere, but people just are covering it up and aren't telling the stories. The last one that I want to do is boys are also abused. About 14% of all young victims of sexual assault are male, according to police reports. 20% of sexual abuse of boys is committed by women. Among African Americans, homophobia perpetuates the denial of sexual abuse of boys. Which means
we just said all of this.
We just said all, like, it's not being reported.
Yeah.
And that's crazy to me. And that's why that's why it was important for us.
And just like only thing I'm sorry, bro.
No,
the
you're
only
good.
only thing I can think about is of that 14%, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many of how much of that goes unhealed through our
Right.
life and then passed down and passed forward?
Yeah.
Like
That's one
how
thing
much
I
of
wanted
that
to
goes
say.
unhealed
Right.
through our life? And from that one incident, traumatic experience, right? Just think about like the effect, the
Yes.
long lasting effect that it
Yes.
has on just that one human being. And
The web
yeah.
of traumas that they're causing.
yeah, basically like how it
you
stems
said,
out.
you weren't even aware of the possible why can't you heal from it. Essentially, is kind of what
Yeah,
your
like I
quote
just
makes, until you were aware of to think of it.
yeah,
Mhm.
I didn't know why I couldn't, like I would refuse to commit.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know. I would refuse to commit. Like I would find any excuse not to commit. Like in my early teen years, like early 20s, and I didn't know why until I made that realization. Like I need to be control, and if I allow myself to be vulnerable, I am then giving up control,
Mhm.
I can
which
see
I
that.
refuse to do at this moment in my life, right? So
Yeah.
it wasn't until I came to that realization and started that journey to heal from that I started making those realizations like, oh, okay, so your like any sexual trauma you went to impacts your life.
Yeah,
Like your especially your sex
absolutely.
life. I promise you.
Yeah, it does.
Especially if it goes unchecked. So the best thing you could do is identify and try to like work to heal it using whatever resource that you that you can.
I'll say this. So, like, while we're talking about our early on experiences, as I never had sexual discipline either, right?
Mhm.
And it's not that I was taught it or saw it around, like, because I think most of the time a lot of men are either damaged, like, not damaged in that way, but our heart is broken, like that, we're damaged in that way by not necessarily the opposite sex, but whatever we're attracted to, right?
Yeah.
And then so we end up becoming, wrecking balls and causing everlasting trauma to other people to become
Mhm.
wrecking balls, which is just um, a lot that goes with information, especially on a huge topic like sex. So I didn't have the sexual discipline because I just didn't learn it. Right, I didn't learn to love my body, or to find something that was worth not, you know, stepping out and doing all this stuff. I didn't even have sexual discipline when I first got married, or had girlfriends, right? Just because I wasn't really thinking about it the way I should have, right?
Mhm.
And it was really terrible,
I have a question with do you think that do you think that the lack of sexual discipline comes from like lack of respect for oneself? In that sense, like do you feel like
Mm,
at that time
no, I
you
think it's a
didn't
lack
respect
of.
yourself enough?
No, I'm not gonna say that. I definitely would say that I didn't care. Like, I still kind of don't really care for, like, necessarily, like, ending of something, right? And so, like, that's
What do you
like a
mean by that?
relationship, like we talked about, like, my life, like, if we really cared for, like,
Thank you for saying my
if we
thoughts.
were to die right now, you see what I'm saying? Like, certain things like
Don't be
that, like,
speaking that into the air
so
though.
what I know, but what I mean by that is, like, I never was really having a thought of worthiness, right?
Okay.
So when I
Okay.
decided to say, "Oh, my wife is worth not stepping out and having sexual discipline," right? Because I feel like I'm not the only man that's gone through this, but I feel like sometimes, and a lot of times in this space, and in community events and stuff like that, women throw themselves at me, right? And not just women, men as well. But, according to what I like, I still have to have sexual discipline, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like, oftentimes the only reason that gives me that sexual discipline is knowing the worth, and it's my wife's worth not stepping out, my wife's worth not doing that, and
But
then
are
I also
The
respect
commitment that you have. Right.
exactly, and I also respect my body enough now not to go ahead
To
and
share
share
it.
that's what I was
because
gonna
it's even
ask.
more because like I said, I've been through STDs and kind of understanding it through, like, experience is like I don't want to go through that again,
Yeah,
right?
because I was gonna ask, like you said, like she's worth it, and I was gonna ask, do you feel you're worth
Oh
it?
yeah, there's
or
other
owe
things.
it to yourself
I'm
to
not
have
gonna go out here
sexual
and get another
discipline?
woman pregnant at this time because it would make absolutely absolutely no sense. I'm not gonna go and bring an STD back or have one myself. And all different kinds of she's worth not this or this situation is worth having sexual discipline in this time. You know what I mean? And so I don't think many young men are taught that part, to have a reason to have sexual discipline, because that's really what it is. Like, you should have sexual discipline. Don't go around and doing us when the one person that's finally actually teaching you this stuff,
They fear
they don't
monger.
teach you that stuff.
They say STDs, they say
Yeah.
pregnancy,
But they
say
don't really
this.
explain those things in the way that they can actually like I said, some of us have to go through that exact experience because we didn't have the right people teaching it to us, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's the kind of things I would tell my younger self, is to just, love yourself more, respect other people that more, because just because you went through some trauma doesn't mean that you have the right to go
pay it forward.
exactly paying
Right.
it forward, and not just paying it forward, paying it like triple and more, because you never know how your
trauma unhealed
Yes.
is
How
and
your
pass
action-
forward. You don't know exactly how bad that is.
Exactly,
It
for
could
that
be
person.
right. So
Yeah. So I'll share my experience really quickly, and then I think that we'll wrap up. I didn't lose my virginity until I was about 19, and then from there, I started that process with no community. Just kind of my own thoughts, like the media. Like, I would find different dating apps. I would go on the internet. Like, I would meet random people. And it really wasn't up until this past year or two where I was like, what do you think about yourself? That makes you feel like you would like to share the most intimate parts of yourself with someone. And while the culture is glorifying sex and sharing yourself with people that have no interest in having a future with you, are you going to stand 10 toes on the fact that you think that you're valuable enough to be thoughtful about what you would like to share? That process for me, and it wasn't like I was intentionally trying to knock everybody down, but I think when the value is low, that is just an effect of that journey. And so I was also trying to encourage myself that I was good looking enough, right? So I subscribed to people fetishizing my body, and I subscribe to like just taking whatever I could get, right? Because my process, no one was speaking life into that.
do you think it's like a mirror in terms of like, because you
hearing
spoke
that
to
too,
value
of how you
and
feel
how you
about
viewed yourself, right? But it's like in any instance, it's like once we started to value ourselves,
That changed.
It probably
Yes.
I remember
changed,
when
right?
I
So-
really looked at sex as like not necessarily starting to get boring, but it was like when I felt finally that I was being used for sex, and I was like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
did she use me?
So
And so it kind of got me to thinking about it on a different spectrum, and that was me, valuing myself as a person, which is weird.
I want to ask you guys this last question, and then we can wrap it up. Do you feel like black men's value is still wrapped up in our body and what we can do and how we look?
Absolutely.
Because I've had people like before they donate to the free yoga classes, or before they come to a ICU bro a roundtable discussion, or before that's open to the public, they'll be like, hey, yo, who's the bald head nigga? And they'll be like, or I've had mad people be like, send train emojis with all of us together.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, and actually, like, while it's a joke, it's not a joke. Like, are you listening to what we?
No, I just heard what you just said.
Yeah, like it get crazy in the DMs.
Wow.
And to be honest with you,
Just choo-chooed us.
y'all, and to be honest with you, I thank you, but also no thank you. Because if you can't listen to the message, you can't even really get around me.
You got to hear the message
The
first.
fact that it was turned, I mean, that's beside the point. We don't even need to go in. But the fact that it was turned into what this is, into that.
No, like people.
The fetishize.
Immediately. Like, immediately, they're like, oh, or mad women have been like, and no shade to anybody who sent me this message because I actually get the message quite often. Like, ooh, I'm gonna sit outside the yoga class, or I'm gonna sit outside the round table. No, no, go talk to your cousin or your brother or your daddy, and then by that you helping the black man next to you, and then maybe we all can live a better life.
Yeah.
Crickets, yeah, it's always gonna be that.
Shout out to the women on the ground.
Yeah, no, cause stop doing that. Stop doing that. If you want to talk about it, do your part.
Yeah.
We're not sitting up here talking trash and not taking accountability.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And you're not going to be invited to this space and into these conversations, and you're not taking accountability. Don't send no messages like that before you actually know what we're talking about.
Just understanding that and going
Mhm.
through that is a different kind
Mhm.
of spectrum, and I think that's another one of the, I guess, myths or misconceptions is that men don't feel that.
Right.
Like they don't feel
Yeah.
like uncomfortable when
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
energy is coming towards them. We just normally naturally accept it, and then and I think that's one thing that should
So
be addressed.
to wrap up, I'm going to say my closing statement to that point, and then I want to give you guys a chance to say your closing statement. Did you have something, Mars? I mean, Yuri?
No.
Oh, so my closing statement is to that point, Mars. Like to all the guys that's listening, begin to value yourself, right? Like when we talk about sexuality and the fetishizing of black bodies, we need to also have the conversation about value and self-worth. And I think the consensus among all of us here was that that pathway became a lot more beautiful, and the respect and what we attracted became a lot more beautiful, and the experiences that we had around our sexuality became a lot more beautiful when we began to value ourselves, and we didn't put ourselves in positions that said, hey, you're a man of low integrity and low value. So I guess my last words to like the guys that are listening and to the women that are listening, like, you're super valuable. Your body is valuable.
Yeah.
How you express yourself should come from a beautiful place of abundance. It shouldn't come from a place of deficit. So watch how you express yourself and who you express yourself with. And also watch when you're expressing yourself. Because I've found that in those really like depressive moments, like that's kind of when I made my worst decisions. I was functioning out of a lack.
Yeah.
Whereas like now I won't even have sex or any intimate moments like unless I'm in a place of abundance. Because I know that I'm only doing this because like I'm lacking something in my personal world.
Trying to fill a void.
But that's my last words. What about you, Mars?
I'll tell you the same thing. I mean, it really does come down to valuing yourself, right? So when I say this, a lot of times when I didn't value myself, I found myself in sketchy situations, right?
Yeah.
Or sus situations. If you find yourself in sketchy situations, sus or dangerous situations, I think you're not valuing yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because you're worrying about temporary pleasures, and I say be weary of temporary pleasures is the biggest thing when you're dealing with just your sexual journey, your sexual discipline, your just the whole thing, and what you think you know about sex is not sometimes like not the right thing, right? Because we're going off of autopilot and the things that we learned as kids or didn't learn as kids. So I say just educate yourself. It doesn't matter how old you are, man, to just educate yourself about a taboo topic that can change your life, that could literally be the reason why you behave the way you do in a lot of situations.
Right.
Or make the decisions you do or who you talk to, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the biggest part about this episode is for people to reaccount their experiences, not really in traumatic ways, but in healing ways, to kind of understand how that affected them or may have affected them, and how they may be affecting other people and to their ripple effect. So that's kind of my closing statement. But you are valuable, like Brenton said, and you are worthy enough to take care of yourself in those retrospects.
What you've been through does not define you.
That's good, Yuri.
I would say, I mean, I wouldn't be here today without things that happened to me. So, and as fucked up as they might have been, I'm in a way grateful, because they've just been a part like I say, every test is a part of the testimony. Um, but I will say, just because things happen to us or we experience things that were out of our control, there will be a certain part in your life where you are responsible for healing from that.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't, those that come after you or those around you, those that you love, will be affected by it in a negative way. So we've all gone through something. It looks a little bit different, sounds a bit different. So I will say it's like everyone out there has gone through something.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to acknowledge it. It's okay that, it was fucked up or you felt alone. Like, it was okay that it's not okay. But just know that at a certain point, you're going to have to be responsible for your healing in that journey. Because if not, you will continue to act out of that trauma worse and worse and worse as time goes on.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd say.
That was a bar. That was a bar. I just want to say thank y'all. Like a real time thank you to the fellas and for the space. I don't know that a lot of people really understand how transformative the ICU bro space is, because a lot of these conversations, even for us, are the first time that we've been as open. I know that I've had certain conversations with friends that I've known for years, but like just the space and the community that you provide for me as an individual sitting in the space is super like transformative and crazy. So a shout out to y'all just for like creating that type of space. This isn't for everybody that's listening, like this is not a joke for us, right? Like we really live what we talk about. And I think that's important to highlight and share. I'm always gonna be loud about um what happens behind the scenes, right? And like what we're talking about, we're living real time. And that's what makes this podcast super different. And that's what makes this podcast like a space that you want to pull up a chair to. And so shout out to the ICU Bro Pod, a space dedicated to discussing taboo topics that we normally don't get to discuss. It's a safe space, a space for us to be ourselves, a space for us to love on one another. Mm-hmm. It's a space for brotherhood. It's a space for people that love black men, know black men, and befriend black men. And so shout out to everybody listening.
Everybody.
I'm Brenton.
And it's number one Misfit Mars. Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe.
And this your boy Yuri, man. Appreciate y'all tuning in, and be sure to leave comments down below and share a little bit about your experiences and just where you can relate with any of our stories, anything that you took from this, anything that you'd like to add to this conversation, because your words, your opinions, your views matter. That's all I got, man. We out.
Peace.